So it's my friend's birthday in 2 weeks, and I have decided to send her a planty package, which is what this video is about. Plus, I have a recommendation for a book. It's a pretty old book, but it's like a book that I recently discovered, and I think everyone should read that book. So I'm going to talk about that book too. Hello, my name is Melissa. Welcome to Plants and Things, where I talk about plants and things. So these are plants that I'm going to be planting, and I'm chuckling to myself because some of these plants are in sphagnum moss because they came out of the propagation box and they need to be repotted, and it feels like the story of my life where I'm like, before I can do something that I really want to do, like planty, the plant has to be repotted, up potted, down potted, da. But anyway, I'll take you through the plants. So this is an Enjoy pothos. And yeah, the parent has been featured on this channel before, and obviously didn't end well with the original plant, but there is a thriving plant now. So I'm going to send her that. I am going to send her this Scindapsus pictus, which is not a pothos. Thank you guys. I'm really... is the word over it? Like, I am over it. I am over this plant, but I also do have 1,000,001 propagations in my propagation box. So if I ever want to get back to Struggle Town, I can get back with this plant. But for now, here she is. And I'm also realizing how kind of dry this plant is. Obviously, these plants are being... I hate how I say obviously all the time. These plants are going to be in a box for like a week as they're being shipped, because she lives in another town, in another city, not a town, in another city, like 1,000 kilometers away. So I do water the plants before I box them up. So I'm going to do that. But I obviously will have to also, there, I did it again. I will have to put soil into the sphagnum moss ones. But I digress. So we have the Pothos Enjoy, we have the Scindapsus pictus, we have a mottled syngonium, which is wet enough, and then there's Peperomia Hope. You guys know I have a lot of Peperomia Hopes in this home. This Syngonium auratum. Yes, so this one also popped. I did speak about how I chopped up my Syngonium auratum because of some mishaps and how this plant we did not have a good time from beginning to end of that other plant. But now we're having a good time because actually this was the top cutting and it's doing really well. So I'm very happy that I cut that plant. So anyway, this is a baby cutting, which is also in sphagnum moss and also needs to be potted. Work. And this is a marble queen pothos, just a baby marble queen pothos, and I really like these plants. Very cute, especially when it's like so tiny. Anyway, so, and these are on a plate. These are on a plate in this home because I was gonna water them and they're gonna drip on here, but now then I realize I actually have to pot up some plants, and that is what I'm gonna do first. So these three, okay, it's only 3 plants that I have to pot up. And then now I will get into this book, and most of you guys will probably be like, how did she just discover that book? Maybe it's like one of those books that people say they've read when they haven't. Like, it's a classic. So the name of the book is The Count of Monte Cristo, and okay, I'm just going to put it here. And I found this book out in the weirdest way. So I was interested, this is going to sound very weird, but I was interested in I wanted to find out about a revenge type structure, like story structure. And then I remembered that there was this show called Revenge with Emily Van Camp, is that how you say it? Yes, there was that show called Revenge that I didn't really watch in depth, but I do have this thing where I will not watch a show, but I will know what's going on in a show because I will watch snippets of the show on YouTube, which is not it's not a good thing, probably. Anyway, so I knew that there was this show called Revenge, where this girlie comes back from, I think they think she's dead. I think basically the basic premise of that book is that, the series, the basic premise of the series, okay, it's not terrible. Those are the roots of this guy. The basic premise of this show called Revenge is that these people, like, what are their names? Basically, the main character's father was betrayed by close friends, I guess, so he goes to jail or dies. I think he dies in the end. So he's framed and betrayed by these close friends. One of them was his, like, the love of his life or whatever. And so it breaks apart these people, their family, and so she grows up without her father. I don't know what happened to her mother. Anyway, but it's basically, then she comes back years later and they don't know who she is. And she comes back to this rich Hamptons. I remember they were in the Hamptons. She comes back to exact revenge, as per the title of the series. So that's the premise of that. And I was like, So anyway, I was thinking that I was going to get the structure from this show. Then I read up on the show, as one does. So I was reading up on the show, and they said, this show is based on this. It's based on this book, The Count of Monte Cristo. And I don't know how I did now that I know about this book, I'm like, I don't know how I did not know about this book before. But it's based on, so the series is based on the Count of Monte Cristo. Then I went and read up on the Count of Monte Cristo, and they said, this actually is the father, basically this novel is the father of the modern revenge archetype, if I can say, the modern revenge story structure. And I was intrigued. Because this is exactly what I was looking for. So I went and read the premise, or the blurb. The premise, I guess it is the premise, the basic premise. These roots are not the biggest, but you know what? This little girl's thriving, so just pot it up back in this little tiny container. So the premise of the Count of Monte Cristo, for those of you who don't know, who, like me, because I didn't know, who don't know this book, basically this guy called Edward Dantes. Edward Dantes is the main character, and he is a sailor. Because the book starts with them coming back. So anyway, he's a sailor, and they've come back from this big trip where the captain died. Anyway, so he's about to be promoted. He's good looking, he's young, the world at his feet, is about to marry the love of his life. The problem is, this other guy likes the love of his life, and this guy that he works with, so I'm obviously I'm giving more context than the blurb would give, but so there are people who don't want this for him, basically, and they plot his demise. These two main people plot his demise. This one who wanted, who himself wanted to be captain, I guess, and he's an old, bitter man, and this guy who's in love with Edward Dante's beloved. And they plot a thing, and they basically say that he's a Bonapartist sympathizer, and that essentially means, because during this time, this is during like Napoleon, I think this is after Napoleon had been taken out, but he was still at this isle. I forget what the isle is called, but he was still somewhere, and there were people who were, the Bonapartist sympathizers were people who sympathized with Napoleon, and they want Napoleon back in, but right now the king is back in, so it's like really tense times to be a Bonapartist sympathizer, which Edward wasn't. He's just a naive young man who's in love and has, he's building his career, and so anyway, they plot his demise. So I'm done with this, and I need to actually go quickly water these plants and then get the packing things before I continue the story, because I've wanted to talk about this story for so long, and I'm like, people should read this. So I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. And I actually have tea in this cup. So I'm ready to rumble. I definitely should have watered these plants a couple of days ago so that they would be moist without dripping right now. But I think I have a solution, and I am hoping for all the best because this is scheduled to be done today, and I want to like do it today, and it's going to be done today. So I'm hoping for all the best. Honestly, I have this what a word. What a word. Polycotton fill is the stuff that you use in stuffed animals. So I'm going to put that at the bottom of this thing so that it doesn't drip anyway. But anyway, that is a digression. I actually also need to go get the box. Yeah, I'm just reusing a delivery box, but I need all of these things that I'm going to seal them in. These cardboard situations. And I was going to clear this away, but I didn't. So, yes, to go back to Edward Dante's. I also, sorry, before I go back to Edward Dante's, I do put the poly, I learned this from my favorite YouTuber, that you put the poly like thingy, the polycotton filler also in there to keep the substrate inside. So today I'm going to be using it everywhere. Yay. And have some tools. Where are the scissors? Yes. Okay. So anyway, to return to Edward Dante. So these, well, one of them, the mean man called, because I was listening to this book, I was both listening to it on audiobook and also reading it. And before I heard the name pronounced by the person reading this, because there's a lot of French words, French, and I didn't do French, you know. But yeah, anyway, so before I heard this guy's name, I was in my head pronouncing it Danglers. I was like, Danglers, and actually his name is Danglars. So yeah, thank goodness for audiobooks, I say. Okay, this is not, why aren't you sticking? Okay, I think I will have to, anyway. So this Danglars, and Ferdinand is the one who's in love with Edward's beloved. So they devise this whole scheme that they are going to, so they basically, Danglars writes a letter accusing, but it's not even accusing Edward, it's saying like, oh, this random person in the ship might have this thing. Oh, actually no, he does mention his name. So they accuse him, and then he throws it away. And he's like, you know, this is something we could do. And then anyway, they hatch a scheme, and then Edward was supposed to get married that night, but Edward does not get married because the Pope arrived at his like wedding banquet. No, he's supposed to get married the day before. I don't know how this marriage thing works there, but anyway, they were having a wedding banquet the night before, and they were going to get married the next day, like in the afternoon. And then this letter arrives to Villefort, who is this young up-and-coming lawyer who's like trying to marry this rich lady to make connections because, you know, social mobility. And he's the guy who's persecuting, he's the guy who gets the letter, and Edward goes to meet with him, you know, when the police get him, and he's the guy who is investigating him. And Edward tells him, and then he asks him, you know, this is what this letter says. Wow. This is what this letter says. Villefort says to Edward, this is what this letter says, blah, 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 blah. And then Edward's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But the captain who died on the ship had given Edward a letter to send to these people to Paris. And Edward gives him this letter, and the letter says, you know, like it is actually a Bonapartist letter, but it's not Edward who was sending this thing. But anyway, Edward now is being accused. And it was like, I was doing like this command that my captain gave me, the last command that he gave me, and anyone who's anyone would do that. And anyway, they get the letter because they went and searched the cabin. They find the letter, and it turns out that, they find this letter about Bonapartist vibes, and it was like, I don't know what this is about. And Villefort reads the letter, and it turns out that his father, because Villefort's father is a Bonapartist sympathizer. So it turns, this letter mentions his father, which of course would be terrible for our up and coming star. So he says, oh no, I'll help you, Edward, and we'll burn the letter, and then we won't have any letter, so you won't go to jail. And Edward's like, young, naive, it was like, good to go, And anyway, somehow he ends up in prison that very same night, because Villefort's like, this man should go to prison. So Edward ends up in prison because it turns out Villefort was like, we're not doing that. You need to go to jail because you know this, and I'm not having my father tarnish my name. And so he protects his Bonapartist father. Villefort is, what is it when the kings, he's with the kings and stuff. What is it called? There is a word for this. The crown. Imperialist, I think that's the word. Anyway, so but basically he's slimy. Is what you need to know. He's with whomever he needs to be to get where he needs to go. That is what Villefort is about. So anyway, Edward ends up in jail, and he is very confused because obviously Villefort said, sir, you'll be fine. You'll be out. I just need to sort things out. So he's very confused about how he ended up in jail in Chateau d'If, which is this like prison. So he's left his father behind, his old father, and he's left his beloved, and they don't know where he's gone. Nobody's going to tell them. And he has he's what is it called? His boss is trying to also find out, and he has some power, but they can't find out what happened to Edward. Anyway, then he's in jail for very long. His father dies. I think he was in jail. Yeah, because in total he's in jail for 14 years. And anyway, in jail, they somehow meet this other, this Abbé, who is trying, he has this plan. He tells him how he has hidden all this money in this island of Monte Cristo, and the two of them hatch a scheme to try escape. This Abbé is really smart. He's building tunnels. He's teaching Edward all these things. This is a bit tricky, because I think I'm just going to leave it like that. Am I? Yes, you are. So anyway, they're hatching schemes, and they're going to escape, and then they're going to share the money, and it's a good time. But before all of this, anyway, Edward tells him what happened to him, because he's still so confused, 10 or however many years in, he's still very confused about how he ended up in Chateau d'If. There is a lot of water in here. He is very confused. And the Abbé, who's super smart, super wise as well, and Abbé means priest, because I learned that in the book, tells him. So Edward tells him his story, and the Abbé's like, okay, let me help you. And then he's like, did you have any enemies? Did you have anyone who would have wanted blah, 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 blah? So basically, the Abbé helps him solve what happened. And Dantes vows to get vengeance. And the Abbé, he has this wink, this twinkle in his eye about how he's going to get vengeance. And the Abbé's like, no, my friend. That is bad for you. Seeking vengeance is bad for you. And you know what? I loved that. Because a lot of the books we read, it's almost, we have to be on the side of whoever the main character is, even if the main character is bad. And I like that in this book, it's already, and a lot of times when the hero is going after vengeance, it seems like it's right that he's going for vengeance, but it's no, vengeance is bad, right? And the reason it's bad, because maybe some people are like, what, vengeance is bad, is because justice is good. Yes, Dante should have gotten justice, but revenge is not just seeking justice. It's seeking to I want to kill you, I want to kill your family, basically an eye for an eye is justice, but we are I want both your eyes and your ears. Anyway, when we go for vengeance. So I loved that the book was like, no, this is more like, it's wrong to seek vengeance. Obviously, Edward is like, so Edward, he still wants vengeance, but he promises the Abbé that he won't go for vengeance while the Abbé is alive, or something like that. Like, he won't seek out vengeance while his like new father, what is it, adopted father, because this is the two of them in this dungeon. While he's alive, he will not seek out justice, seek out vengeance against these people who've done this to him. And then, as they are leaving, though, the Abbé dies, which is sad. But anyway, he dies, and then Edward manages to escape. And then he manages to find the money, and he vows to go find revenge. And he even goes and he becomes the Count of Monte Cristo, and he has all these disguises. It is he hatches up such a crazy plan. Not crazy in that it's unbelievable, but that it's like so time consuming and so methodical. And that's basically what the book is about. It's about Edward Dante's seeking revenge on these people who have wronged him. And it's very intense. It's very intense, but also such a good story. And I'm like, I can see why the story is the archetype of, it's a very good story. And also, I once read a very obscure book where she does the same. She goes and she's basically like, people do bad things to her and she returns years later to get revenge. So I'm like, yeah, it is true that this is the archetype of a revenge story. So I highly recommend, and that is my book recommendation. Okay, I think I am almost done with this. My paste, my sellotape pasting, it's not the best. It's not the best, but these plants are also not like, these ones are super easy because they're so neat, these three, but these other ones where there's a lot more going on are a wee bit more challenging. So I already cut out these papers. Trying to find out. Yeah, so I've already cut them out, and basically I'm going to put them in like a cone to protect them, so that they're not wiggling around during transit. But I am going to put stuff under here so that they're not also messing the paper up. Just making it up as I go along. I actually should just do it here so I can make it up as I go along. Anyway, this book was great. Are those my final thoughts? Those are my a lot happens and there are many characters, and Monte Cristo comes back to exact revenge, like 20 something years later, he comes back to get his revenge. So I am pasting this onto this thing so that, again, it doesn't move around. And again, I learned this packing technique from my favorite YouTuber. Yeah. So I'm going to pack these all together. Yeah. But anyway, so final thoughts, separately about the book, is that it is a really long book, but I really couldn't put it down. And that's why I had to do audio and sorry for that sound. Audio and Kindle, so that I could, when I was reading it, when I was sitting down and I could use my hands, then I could read it. But if I was moving around, then I was listening to it. And I finished this, I think it's 1,200 pages. I read the unabridged. I'm not a fan of abridged books. I don't know what the point of them is, but let me know what the point of them is. If you're you're an abridged person, but I really am I don't see what the point of this is. Yeah. So see? Ha! That's fun. I am going to put this back here because It's not dripping anymore. Okay, so that is that one. Yes, and then I have all of these guys to do. This is feels like an easier task because I was chatting to you guys. So I'm just gonna finish all of this and then get to the boxing. So that is basically it. I think because of the fact that some of these are really still drip drying, like I said, I should have watered them a while ago. I'm actually going to let them sit out first before I put them in this box and then put the crinkle paper and then send this to her. So I think that's what I'm going to do. But that's basically it for today. Thank you so much for listening to my thoughts about Monte Cristo. Obviously, people are like, yeah, haven't you watched the movie? And no, I haven't watched the movie. And I don't like watching adaptations of books. Yeah, I really don't. Yeah. But if you have watched the book, let me know what you like, and also let me know what you liked about it, actually whether you liked it or not, and also what you liked about it or did not like about it. So God, because I loved it. It's like 5 out of 5 stars, and I want to talk more about it, so let me know. Anyway, that's it for today. See you next time. Bye.